What's going on, guys? This is Bumstar, and today we're playing all the mods 10 to the sky. In between episodes, I've done a few things. I have cleared out our farm and made a few more gears. I've seeped a bunch of blackstone, which means I now have netherite through ancient debris. And I did make a ancient debris gear to start getting that process as well as a gold one, so that way you can make the netherite scraps with those. I have added all of our items into our storage, and we still have a ton of room. I have put copper upgrades into a bunch of them and did the compacting drawers. I also created a little platform out here because I was trying to come up with an idea of how I want to build things out. But in doing so at night, zombies and skeletons and spiders and creepers have all congregated on that island, so I killed a few zombies to get some rotting flesh, and that's about it in between episodes. So for this episode, we are going to jump into the wonderful world of mystical agriculture. There aren't a ton of seeds in this pack that we're going to utilize, but the few that are in here will be extremely helpful. Things like dirt, wood, all the elements, dye seeds, basic resources that are harder to come by in a skyblock. And then we're also going to be looking at Botany Pots, because in the most recent update, Botany Pots have been added to the game. It's been a very long time since I've played with Botany Pots, so I'm not quite sure everything that entails. Once we're done with that, we might get into our first source of power, because, well, once we have our seeds set up and our botany pots, we've kind of got all of the basic resources covered, which means that we can start moving on to the bigger mods within the pack and making our way to the ATM star. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is get some prosperity shards. And with prosperity shards, we're also going to need wheat seeds. While I was gathering some quests in our quest book here, I stumbled up across some inferium seeds. The other way that I've noticed to get inferium and inferium seeds is by killing passive mobs. They seem to drop inferium essence, so you could use that to make inferium seeds as well. For now, we're just going to rock the two that we have. As you can see here, I have started making an animal pen. The few other animals that are located on our map here are on the edge of something, so they're pretty hard to get to and get back here. So maybe between episodes, I might go and try and rescue them. I just gotta wait for the wandering trader to come in so I can borrow some leads from him. As you can see here as well, I have died because that is how I found out that zombies and skeletons were spawning, because I was up here just kind of cleaning stuff up, setting up gears. Next thing I know, there's a zombie attacking me, and, well, I didn't have any armor, I didn't have any weapons, because I haven't had to deal with that yet. So I quickly made myself a set of diamond armor, since we have plenty of diamonds, and I made myself a diamond paxel. Now, this isn't the paxel that I would normally use. This is the mechanism paxel, but I did put fortune, efficiency, and unbreaking on here. They were just all books that I've gotten from handing in quests and finding randomly, not sure where I got a ton of them. But I did throw them on there with some of the levels that I got from the quest book. And I also made some of the productive metalwork casting, which all you need to do that is put some iron and coal inside your foundry, and that'll convert it to steel for a 1-to-1. And then with steel, you just put the items. So like you put an ingot in here, pour the steel on top, and it makes the casting. And then that's how I now make netherite, is through gathering these gold clusters and these ancient debris clusters, throwing them in here. It turns into a molten netherite. And then you come over here and right click, and it pours it out right there. So we're getting netherite that way. We're not using it for anything yet because I believe we're going to need to go to the nether to get some smithing templates so we can start utilizing that for everything that it's needed for. Things like the upgraded sieves require smithing templates, and we can also get the upgrades here, our upgraded armor and weapons, to just basic netherite. That might be a next episode thing. We'll see how today goes. So now that we have our inferium seeds, we could just plant these. And that wouldn't be bad, except they grow extremely slow. You could just sit here and twerk on them to get them to grow, which is fast, but also time consuming, considering you have to stand here and do this the whole time. Another option we have are these growth accelerators, and we can put them down in a grid pattern along a 9x9 to speed up the growth, which is 100% what we're going to do to start, because they do speed this up a ton, especially when you have it completely surrounded. But another way to speed that up is through red fertilizer. And the combination of red fertilizer and growth accelerator, the combination between red fertilizer and growth accelerators is pretty strong when you're first getting started. It is not the fastest way to do this, but it is a great start to it. So as it stands right now, we really only have enough resources for 2 of the growth accelerators. So we're going to put those down. And just utilize some around here. So now, seeing how fast this grows by itself, and if we put one in between here, you can now see it is growing much, much quicker, but still not super fast. So now to make this even faster, we're going to grab everything we need for red fertilizer. And each recipe gives us 4. So we don't have a ton of red dye yet, but if you get some poppies, you can kind of twerk to grow or use bone meal and gather red dye pretty quickly. So I don't know what happened to that. There we go. So now that we have the red fertilizer down, it should grow even faster. Let's sleep real quick to get some light going. Now that we have the red fertilizer in here, these should be growing a lot quicker. As you can see, this one grew almost instantly. But the other problem that we have now is, well, we have to sit here and harvest them, and that's kind of annoying. To counter that, we can make what is called a harvester pylon. And to make a harvester pylon, it is polished blackstone, iron bars, hay barrel, and some quartz slabs. Once you have all of that, just need 1 for a 9x9, and you can actually put that directly in the water and it'll be waterlogged. So the water is still there, but the harvester pylon is in here. You want to set this to a 9x9, make sure it's turned on, and then we have to place an inventory above it, and we need to put a hoe in here so it can gather. So what I would like to do to make this easier is we're going to place a chest right on top here, and this is going to be our buffer. So everything for now is going to go in here. So let's go ahead and make a hoe real quick. So if we put this in here, now you can see the hoe's duration is starting to go down. These are now growing and being instantly harvested, and they're being put directly into this chest. Now, something that we can do is we can put a item pipe here, and you can still open it even with an item pipe. And then we are going to put a storage access point right here that should start pushing these items to that controller point as long as we link it. So now that is pushed here, and I have Inferium here right now, and as you can see, it is slowly going up. So now this is completely automated, and every time that we add a seed to this, that item is going to be harvested still, but put into this chest. And the thing that we're going to need to do then is make sure that whatever items that we put in here has a slot in our storage system, so that way it'll be sorted in here and not completely block this chest from having items in it. Really just a buffer so we don't have to manually harvest anything. It's just going to be put in here and then automatically put to our controller access point. There are a few different things that you can use instead of a controller access point. I just find this easiest when everything is close enough. There are other options like ender chests and dimensional chests and things of that nature that you can use to do this setup. If I'm able to use the functional storage, I will use that instead because it's just automatically being directed. That access point acts as if it's a storage controller. It's just completely linked to it. And as long as it's within the link range, which you can upgrade with the upgrade cards, you will be fine. And I think my goal is to keep everything close enough that once I have this completely upgraded as far as it can go, everything will just be pushed directly into access points to make it easier. As I said before, this is not the fastest way to do this, but it is the easiest and the most efficient for early game. If we got into Just Dire Things, we could use the Just Dire Things soil as well as the growth accelerators instead of red fertilizer, but everything that I've seen has shown that red fertilizer with a growth accelerator is faster than Just Dire Things soil. The benefit of Just Dire Things soil is that you don't need the harvest pylon, so you can have it set to automatically get sent directly to a storage, and it's one less step that you have to worry about. So now that we have this set up, we're going to leave this going for a while to just auto collect this essence, so that way we can start using it to craft higher tiers of mystical agriculture stuff, so we can make an unbreakable hoe. We can start making the other seeds. And with those other seeds, for example, for the water seed, all we need is gravel, dirt, clay, and water buckets. But in order to make that seed, we do need the altar that comes with mystical agriculture. And to get that, we need more red dye. And to get more red dye, you can just throw a poppy on the ground, grab some bone meal, which you've got from sieving, and just spam it. If you find that you do not have any poppies, you'll still have plenty of bone meal. So what you can do then is use bone meal on grass and you'll start to get some flowers. Just keep doing that until you get a poppy. So the reason you're going to need red dye is because you're going to need red wool. And you can make wool from the string that we've got from infesting leaves. Now that we have our red wool, we just need some stone, some gold ingots, our red wool, and we can make the infusion altar, as well as 8 of the infusion pylons or pedestals. Once you put this infusion altar down, it shows you where all the pedestals need to be. So just place those all down. Now that we have our altar, we need to make some prosperity seeds. So that's going to be 4 prosperity shards and 1 wheat seed to make a seed base. And now let's find our dirt. So we're going to need 4 dirt, 4 inferium essence, and 1 seed. So it doesn't matter what order you put these in, but you place them on the pedestal, 4 each. You put your seed in the middle, and then, well, nothing happens. This requires a redstone signal. Now you could use a button, anything that permits redstone. What I like to do is get some redstone dust, make a block of redstone, break this, break out the center, put that block down, put that here. And now whenever you have everything in here, as long as it's a correct recipe, it'll automatically do what you need it to do. So now we have dirt essence growing, and we're going to do the exact same thing with logs. Now at this point, I'm not going to continue to bore you by making every seed that's available. I will do that between episodes and have that set up. And it's just going to be set up exactly like this, but probably moved to a new location by the time that we get to the next episode. I think it's time to move on to Botany Pots. So in order to get Botany Pots, we're going to need clay. And in order to make the Botany Pots, you have to make terracotta, which is just throwing clay into a furnace. And now that we have our terracotta, we can go ahead and find our flower pots here. And let's go ahead and make a botany pot. And then we can also make a hopper botany pot, which is just 1 botany pot with a hopper. So we'll go ahead and make a second one and experiment with both of them to see if the hopper botany pot is worth it. So now let's see, we're going to just throw the botany pot over here for now. In that botany pot, you can put a seed here, and I believe this is just going to be dirt. So let's test that out. Now, the one thing I am curious about with these botany pots is if we're going to be able to do mystical agriculture seeds here. So I think with a standard botany pot, you would need to have a storage set down. Let's go ahead and put a chest here. Let's take these out, break that, and put our botany pot right here. I'm going to go ahead and put a hopper botany pot here. I'm not really sure what the case is for a regular botany pot and how to use them, but I think we just use a hopper botany pot here. And that should, this gives you a actual inventory. Maybe if we use a regular seed. Growth time 1 minute. Okay, so there we go. That seems to be working. Let that run. We're going to grab some dirt and put a sapling in there and just see if anything happens. And we'll check this at the end of the episode. This might be worth it for some basic plants. Instead of wasting spots in our farm, we could just use that for things like hemp and wheat and carrots and basic foods that we need. So now that we have the botany pots over here growing, we have our seeds out. I think the next thing that we're going to do is our generator. I think it's about time that we get some basic power going. And from reading into this mod pack, it looks like they have buffed generator galore to actually be worth using instead of jumping into iron furnaces for our base power, which is what I normally do. We're going to use generators galore and see how that works out. It's not what we're going to use in the end game, but it should be more than enough for what we need it for moving forward. The generator that we are going to start with is the Magmatic Generator. It has a rate of 160 FE per tick. It can transfer 2048 FE per tick. It holds 500,000 FE, and it uses a fluid, which obviously is going to be lava. For this, we're going to need a furnace, some gold, glass, and a block of redstone. So now that we have our magmatic generator, we're going to go ahead and place that over here where we have our lava being generated at the moment. So now we need to pump lava in here. So we're going to need our fluid pipes. And now we have lava pumping in and energy pumping out. And then the plus side of these generator galore generators is that we now have a charging spot. And with that charging spot, we will be able to charge our build tools, jetpacks, and things of that nature. We could sit here and just do this, right? Just have one of these with 500, but why do that when there's compressed versions? And with compressed, we can have the 8 times magmatic generator, which does 1,280 FE per tick with a transfer rate of 16,000 while holding 4 million FE total. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Break that. We have plenty of resources to make more of these because, well, these aren't too expensive. We realistically could have been doing this way earlier than we are now. We are going to need a diamond gear, which is just a iron nugget and 4 diamonds. And now we have our 8 times magmatic generator. Now we could go to a 64, which is 8 times magmatic with a netherite gear. But I want to see how quickly this 8 times sucks in lava before we start doing that, because I don't want to build something that we're not going to be able to use. So now this seems to be holding the same amount of lava, but it is consuming it pretty quickly. And these should automatically fill up with the cobblestone and be pumped into here. But as you can see, it is using way more lava than we are producing. So for now, we're going to leave it at this, but in order to make this run smoothly, we are going to need to make a ton more crucibles with the cobblestone being pumped into them and running to the generator. Now that we have our magmatic generator set up, we can start using things that require power. And I think the very first thing we're going to make are going to be build gadgets and a jetpack so we can start flying. That way, in between episodes, I can start building something better than, well, this, to kind of spread out and take up more room and really start exploring this area and building rooms specifically for different things. So the build gadgets are one of my favorite things in modded Minecraft because it makes building a lot easier. You can exchange blocks, and it's essentially using Silk Touch to move a block. So moving things are a lot easier. And normally with something like Gears, you would need Silk Touch or the exchange tool or copy paste tool or cut paste tool, to move these. But the nice thing is these are actually set up where you can break this block and you're still going to get the budding Gear right after. So you don't have to worry about breaking these and wasting them. You can move them around as much as you want and not have to worry about it. It is a fantastic quality of life. Now, to make these tools, the building gadget is, in my opinion, the most important, and it's pretty cheap to make. Just some diamond, lapis, and redstone. The exchange tool is the same thing. Copy paste requires some emeralds. Cut paste requires some shears. And the destruction requires ender pearls. We're not necessarily going to need the destruction tool, so I'm not going to craft that. But we will have the cut paste, copy paste, exchange, and build tool. And now that I have all of these tools made, we can pop them in here, charge them, and they don't need to be fully charged. You don't use the resources too quickly unless you're doing really big cuts with the cut paste tool. But the cut paste tool does hold a ton of energy. And then the last thing I want to do is make some jetpacks. We have a couple different options for jetpacks. We have our iron jetpacks, and we have our mechanism jetpack, as well as some modern industrialization and ore tech. But the one that I like the most is the iron jetpack, because once you kind of get to this emerald tier, it essentially is creative flight, but using power. And, well, we'll get creative flight pretty easily through the pylon mod later on. But for now, to make building easier, I would like to at least get a basic jetpack set up. For each jetpack that you make, you're going to need 11 basic coils. And then we will need 2 furnaces. And then we're going to need 5 of these wood energy cells, 2 of the thrusters, 1 of the capacitors. And then for the very first one, you need a leather strap. Now that we have that, we have our wooden jetpack. We can come over here, throw it in there. The charge doesn't hold too much. And then you can equip that to your back. And I strongly suggest you go and change your controls. So go to category and jetpack, or iron jetpack. And now you can have your throttle set to whatever binds you want for increase and decrease, toggle engine, and toggle hover mode. The defaults are fine, but they do mesh with some other keybinds. For example, my magnet is on H. So whenever I turn my magnet off, my hover is turned on. But as you can see, when I jump with my hover on, nothing happens because we don't have the engine turned on. Now that we have that on, we can go up and hover. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the energy bar as well as what is turned on and off. But you can see I really haven't flown around much, and I'm already almost halfway through my energy. That's where getting the higher tier backpacks or jetpacks will come in handy, because the higher tier that you have, the more energy that it can hold, and the more energy efficient it is. So I would strongly recommend at least getting the gold, if not diamond, as quickly as you can. Diamond is nice, but it does hold 30 million FE, so you're never really going to fill that up until you have more power going. But the gold one can hold 10 million and uses a decent amount of power. And then obviously Emerald's going to be your end game there. And that's going to be it for today. We got our farm set up with mystical agriculture, as well as some growth accelerators and red fertilizer, and got our harvest pylon made, so that way we are auto harvesting all of that. Messed around with some botany pots, and as you can see, the hopper botany pot is working here. But the regular botany pot, oh, okay, so if we right click it, we will get the items from it, and it is rather slow. So I might need to play around with that a little more. Doesn't really seem worth it. Might as well just go right to a hopper botany pot and just use that for that. We use a wood seed to get wood essence to get our wood. We ended the episode here making our generator, so that way we have some basic power going, which will be more than enough to get us started and everything else that we want to do. Then going in the next episode, this island should look pretty different, and a lot of this stuff should be cleaned up and moved to different areas along the outside. That'll be built up with our build tool and exchange tool. I may just build them with cobblestone to start, but we can make them look fancy once we figure out what block palette we want to go with and use our exchange tool to do so. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like this video if you've made it this far, and I appreciate your support. I will see you in the next one.